𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭 never made it to her second birthday.
Or what led police to that location.
Little Oakley's world shone bright, her giggles infectious, her future limitless. Yet even in light, shadows linger unseen. Teachers noticed her spark but missed the quiet struggles. Neighbors sensed change but paused too long. Now her story teaches us. Protection takes more than systems. It takes us all. What if we choose to listen closer, act faster, and turn silence into strength? Next time, will we see? To understand how so many miss the unthinkable, we must start where Oakley's story began and trace the moments when someone could have changed everything. Oakley May Snow was born on March 10, 2021, in the quiet stretches of Oklahoma, a tiny bundle of hope with eyes that hadn't yet seen the world's sharp edges. Her parents, Madison Marshall and Zachary Snow, were tied together by their love for her, even though they lived separate lives. Oakley wasn't the only heartbeat in their home. She had a little brother just 15 months younger, a toddler whose name we'll protect here by simply calling him CS. But before we begin, I just want to say thank you to my amazing viewers and subscribers. Your support through likes, shares, and comments means the world to me. Your engagement helps make these stories even more meaningful. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. In fact, many people connected to her story are known in court records only by their initials, a reminder that not every name should be spoken when the truth is already heavy enough. Oakley's life began like any other child's, with moments of laughter, discovery, and the small victories of growing up. But sometimes, the world doesn't protect its most innocent souls the way it should. At this time, Madison and Zachary were living separate lives. Zachary stayed in his own home in Cromwell, Oklahoma, while Madison had begun a relationship with 25-year-old Ran Waters and moved into his residence, also in Cromwell. Ran had recently returned to the community in February 2022 after spending nearly 4 years in an Indiana prison for a burglary charge from 2018 in Shelby County, a reminder that some reunions aren't exactly cause for balloons and cake. On October 26, 2022, Madison reached out to the 𝐂𝐸𝐾 County Sheriff's Office to report an incident involving Ran. She explained that during an argument the day before, Oakley had been treated roughly, and when she stepped in, she was also handled in the same manner. Deputies drove to Ran's home in Cromwell and knocked on the door. Ran answered briefly, asked if they had a warrant, and before a word could be said in reply, he shut the door, apparently not in the mood for guests. Through the closed door, deputies tried to explain they were there for a welfare check, but Ran shouted for them to leave. As they began walking back to their vehicles, a blue SUV arrived carrying Madison, Oakley, and her 3-month-old son, CS. When Ran noticed Madison speaking to deputies, he stepped outside and started shouting so loudly that it was nearly impossible to hear her. To make his point even clearer, he turned on loud music. Madison reassured deputies that she and the children were fine, and with no further action taken, the deputies departed. Later that same day, Zachary contacted the sheriff's office to share that Madison had decided to make a formal statement. Deputies met her at Zachary's father's home, where she was with Oakley and CS. Madison recounted that on October 25th, Madison reported that Oakley became distressed during an interaction with Ran. She informed authorities about concerning behavior and showed them documentation. When Madison addressed the situation with Ran afterward, deputies observed physical evidence of the encounter that was recorded for their official report. Deputies noted what they saw, took photographs for the record, and prepared the information for the county prosecutor's review. Madison told them she did not wish to pursue charges related to what happened to her, but she did want to proceed with charges concerning Oakley. By early November, the district court had issued a warrant for Ran's arrest. Authorities filed charges concerning improper supervision and home environment safety issues following their documented review of the case. It was the kind of legal to-do list no one hopes to find their name on. On January 19, 2023, Madison and Ran went to Zachary's home, picked up Oakley and CS, and left without letting him know. When Zachary discovered the children were gone, he contacted authorities right away. He later explained that Madison and Ran had planned to travel to Indiana to stay with Ran's mother and sister, taking the kids along. Following his report, both Oakley and CS were entered into the National Crime Information Center database as missing. Seminole County investigators began looking into the situation almost immediately. Their work revealed that Madison and Ran had left Oklahoma altogether, taking the children across state lines into Indiana. There, they stayed at a residence on Albany Street, just south of downtown Indianapolis. The home belonged to Ran's mother, BP, who not only gave them a place to stay, but also purchased baby formula and other essentials. A reminder that sometimes family support can unintentionally make an already complicated situation even more tangled.
People living near the Albany Street home said it had been known for years as a source of ongoing disturbances. One neighbor recalled frequent loud arguments and suspected illegal activity, but admitted he hadn't realized children were inside. In addition to Ran, Madison, and the two kids, a man known as Chad was also staying there. He explained that he had been friends with Ran and would occasionally live at the house during that period. Chad stated that Ran and Madison were struggling with personal challenges at the time, often spending long stretches disengaged from what was happening around them. According to him, the children were mostly left watching television throughout the day, with little interaction. He said he never saw much warmth between the couple and the kids. Court records show multiple witnesses independently reported concerns about Oakley's welfare during this time. These consistent observations from different sources became part of the official documentation in the subsequent legal proceedings. When she asked about them, Madison and Ran reacted angrily and told her to leave, which she did, proof that sometimes asking questions really will get you shown the door. Madison described a pattern of concerning behavior during their time in Indiana. She explained that Ran frequently overreacted to minor incidents involving Oakley, creating a tense environment. When Madison attempted to intervene, the situation often escalated. This dynamic led Oakley to develop noticeable anxiety, particularly around mealtimes. These accounts were later reviewed as part of the official investigation into the family's circumstances during this period, providing context for the documented welfare concerns. On February 8, 2023, Madison spoke with Ran's older brother, BW, about her concerns. BW said he went to the Albany Street house and noticed marks on Oakley. Believing Ran was responsible, he confronted him outside, leading to a brief scuffle on the lawn. BW eventually left, and by his own admission, he didn't contact law enforcement or child services afterward. An example of how a problem left unreported is rarely a problem solved. On the morning of February 9, 2023, Madison described waking to sounds from Oakley that morning. She explained an incident occurred where Oakley came into contact with the floor. Madison later shared that she took steps to address the visible results, which were noted in official reports during the investigation. Chad remembered seeing Oakley when he came inside that day. He noticed she had makeup on her face, something unusual for a toddler, and it appeared to have been applied by an adult. He quietly noted signs of distress that weighed heavily on investigators later. After that brief encounter, he left the home. Madison claimed that later, while she was in the kitchen, she heard Ran urging Oakley to keep bouncing on her hopper ball. Curious, she walked in and saw Oakley struggling to follow his instructions, the toy clearly being too large for her. Ran eventually stretched out on the couch, and Madison went back to the kitchen. Moments later, she heard his voice again, this time calling out Oakley's name in panic, an abrupt change from the earlier scene. Madison hurried out of the kitchen and saw Ran in the hallway holding Oakley in his arms. The child appeared and unresponsive. Ran kept insisting he hadn't done anything and that it wasn't his fault. He refused to allow Madison to take Oakley to the hospital and began removing her. In that moment, Madison saw Oakley's visible struggle, an image forever etched in the official record. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Madison tried to call 911. The phone suddenly disconnected mid-call, leaving only silence where voices had been moments before. Once she retrieved her phone, she called Chad, urging him to return home because something had happened to Oakley. Chad later said that the moment he stepped inside, he regretted leaving earlier. Rand attempted to place Oakley in a cold bath, apparently hoping it would help, but it had no effect. He then covered her in a pink and black blanket decorated with hearts and placed her in the back seat of his Dodge Durango, a grim end to what should have been an ordinary morning. A neighbor later recalled seeing Rand and Madison leave the house carrying what appeared to be a small figure inside a blanket, and the figure didn't seem to be moving. As they reached the car, Oakley's condition had visibly changed. Madison realized with sudden certainty that her daughter's natural energy was gone, a quiet absence more telling than any words could express in that moment. She sat in the back seat holding Oakley's hand quietly, as though trying to pause time for just a moment longer. Eventually, Madison moved to the front passenger seat, while Rand drove away from Indianapolis toward Martinsville. Their route wound through back roads until they reached a weathered building on a hill, said to belong to Rand's grandparents. He stopped on a gravel path, climbed through a window carrying Oakley, and left Madison waiting in the car.
Madison said she pleaded with Rand to take Oakley to the hospital, but he refused, telling her it would only land her in trouble. While he was inside the car, she reached for something to steady her nerves, trying to block out the fear and confusion. When Rand came back, he held only the blanket Oakley had been in. Madison remembered his unsettling composure as he quietly assured her she wouldn't speak of what happened, a chilling confidence that needed no further explanation. The two then decided they would tell everyone Oakley had been taken to the hospital, a lie that rolled off the tongue far easier than the heartbreaking truth they were hiding. Later that day, Chad noticed Rand briefly stopping by his mother's workplace. His visit was short, and his nervous demeanor was hard to miss. That afternoon, Rand sent his brother a message simply saying he needed him. BW chose not to reply. Concerned, Chad decided to check in personally. He later recalled BW receiving a tense call from their mother, her voice filled with worry. BW responded sharply, insisting he had no idea what Rand was up to and that the family would have to sort it out themselves before ending the call. Meanwhile, little CS, who was just an infant at the time, was discovered alone in the Albany Street house. Chad contacted BP, explaining that the couple had left the baby with him and asking her to pick him up. BP retrieved the child, but soon handed him over to KW so she could return to work. KW asked why CS had been left behind. She was told that Oakley had a mishap while playing and needed to be taken to the hospital right away. Wanting to make sure everything was all right, KW visited several hospitals, but at each one, she learned that Oakley hadn't been checked in or seen by staff that day. KW grew increasingly uneasy about CS remaining in the Albany Street home. She asked her husband to pick them up so she could bring the baby to her own house where things felt safer. About 15 minutes later, her husband arrived, just as Rand and Madison returned. KW noticed Oakley wasn't with them, and without exchanging a word, she quietly left with CS. That evening, KW contacted Child Services to take temporary care of the baby. She explained Rand's claim that Oakley had been taken to the hospital, though she doubted the timing added up. The nearest hospital was close, but not that close. Rand and Madison later told her they had decided to place Oakley with someone in Indianapolis. They claimed the matter was handled, but gave no details. KW's concern for Oakley deepened. After all, when someone won't answer simple questions, it usually means the answer isn't simple. Later that night, Chad returned to the Albany Street house. Rand and Madison were there, but neither child was in sight. Their distracted, sluggish state made it clear they were far from focused on anything, least of all explaining where Oakley was. Afterward, witnesses reported seeing Madison and Rand travel to Colorado. The final time KW encountered Madison was on March 3rd when she appeared at KW's home asking for a place to stay. KW agreed, on one condition. Madison needed to share Oakley's whereabouts. Madison declined, turned, and walked away. KW never saw or heard from her again. That same day, police in Greenwood Village, Colorado, arrested Rand at a Best Western hotel on a warrant dating back to November 2022. Officers had responded to a complaint and found him there, but Madison was nowhere in sight. Inside the room, there was no trace of children, no belongings, no signs of recent presence. During the interview, Rand acknowledged traveling with Madison and the children from Oklahoma to Indiana, including a stop where they temporarily separated from one child. As for Oakley, he said she was left somewhere in Indiana but refused to give any details. It was the kind of vague answer that raises far more questions than it settles. In the following days, Detective Craig Tangen from the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office reviewed recordings of Rand's phone calls while he awaited transfer back to Oklahoma. In conversations with his mother, Rand acknowledged that he had lied to investigators. He admitted he had been present when the children were left behind and had personally helped Madison leave Oakley somewhere, though he gave no clue as to where that was. BP informed Rand that Madison now had possession of his phone. Madison mentioned she planned to change her name, though she offered no hint about what it would be. She also told Rand she had spoken with his mother after his arrest to seek advice on her next move. The plan they settled on was for Rand's older brother and his wife to travel to Colorado and bring Madison back to Indianapolis. Throughout these discussions, Madison made no reference to Oakley or CSBP, said she agreed to help Madison return to Indiana because she believed Madison had no one else to turn to. In truth, the goal was to keep Madison from being found and to prevent Rand from facing further legal trouble. Meanwhile, Oakley remained missing. Her father, Zachary, told reporters he couldn't imagine wishing something like this on anyone, even someone he deeply disliked. He described spending every day and night making calls, reaching out to anyone who might have the smallest piece of information about his daughter's whereabouts. On the afternoon of March 6th, investigators contacted the FBI in Indianapolis to assist in finding Oakley and Madison.
The following day, Indianapolis police carried out a search at a home on Albany Street. Inside, the first floor was filled with baby supplies, clothing, toys, a playpen, a rocker, unopened diapers, and other child care items. Forensic teams found no signs pointing to a specific incident, so nothing was taken as evidence. Detective Eric Parrish and another investigator spoke with a neighbor living close to the home. She recalled seeing a crew in February who appeared to be doing cleaning or repairs. They painted, moved items out, and took away a roll of carpet. The work went on late into the night, and although she couldn't recall the exact day, she believed it was near the time of the Super Bowl. She commented that if anything of interest had once been there, it was likely gone now. On March 8, 2023, a judge approved a request to obtain call records for both Rand and Chad. A location warrant was also granted to track Rand's phone in an effort to find Madison. That same day, permission was given to seize and search the Dodge Durango Rand had been using. Officers and FBI agents located the SUV outside BW's home. BW's wife, DW, mentioned she had cleaned it the previous day because of a strong animal odor. The vehicle was taken to the IMPD Animal Control Facility for safekeeping before being searched, possibly the only case where animal control and crime investigations shared the same parking lot. The following day, Detective Anthony Weaver led a trained cadaver dog around the Durango. The dog signaled possible traces connected to human remains. Inside, the lab noted what appeared to be dried staining in the rear storage area. The affected cushion material was removed and kept as evidence. On March 9, 2023, DW spoke with investigators. She explained that earlier that month, she and her husband had traveled to Colorado to retrieve Rand's SUV. Their trip had been arranged and paid for by BP, her mother-in-law. They flew out around March 2nd, took a rideshare to a hotel, and there met Madison, who handed over the keys. The three of them then drove the vehicle back to Indianapolis. Not long after the trip began, DW noticed Madison toss her phone out the window. Later, Madison admitted she had never truly wanted to be a parent and spoke about the challenges she faced. She also mentioned plans to head to North Carolina to meet someone named Nick. When officers interviewed BW, he explained that upon returning to Indianapolis with Madison, he left her near Troy Avenue and Shelby Street. They reconnected on March 4th when he spotted her near a business without a phone. That evening, he drove her to the Greyhound station and purchased a cash ticket to Fayetteville for about $180. She had dyed her hair black, carried only a few bags, and left without saying who she would meet. By March 12th, Special Agent Len Rothermike learned from Zachary that Madison had a close friend in Fayetteville. Around this time, AT&T provided Rand's phone records, revealing frequent calls between him, Chad, and BP on February 9th, along with location data. A separate search located Madison's discarded iPhone 14 at the front desk of a Colorado motel, where it was logged as evidence. The next day, Zachary called again, confirming Madison had taken a bus to Fayetteville. Reviewing her 3 Facebook profiles, he identified a mutual friend in the area and suspected she might stay with that person. In a touch of irony, while Madison seemed determined to disappear, her trail was practically leaving breadcrumbs online. Agents traced Madison's possible contacts and identified a friend living in Bladenboro, North Carolina, roughly a 45-minute drive from Fayetteville. On March 14th, investigators, including Agent Rothermick, visited the Greyhound station. With help from staff, they reviewed security footage from the evening of March 4th. The video showed a woman who matched Madison's description walking in with a man resembling BW. She appeared to be using a phone inside while he waited nearby. 2 days later, a warrant was issued in Indiana for Madison's arrest on charges connected to the well-being and care of a child. On March 17th, the FBI's Fayetteville office joined the search. Task Force Officer Lynn Gillespie Alley went to the Bladenboro address, but got no answer at the door. A call to a possible phone number reached someone who was uncooperative and denied seeing Madison or knowing anything about Oakley's location. By March 18th, Zachary had located a new Facebook account under the name Bunny Cooper, which he believed belonged to Madison.
The search ended on March 23rd when agents from the Charlotte field office found Madison at a residence in Bun Level, North Carolina. She was taken into custody, advised of her rights, and agreed to speak. Oakley's location remained unknown, though investigators feared the worst. Rand's sister, KW, shared that she had the same concern. On April 20th at precisely 4:20 p.m., a time that no one could forget, though not for celebratory reasons, Madison was booked into the Marion County Jail on 2 counts related to the care and safety of a child. It was there she finally admitted to her actions. On April 21st, Madison, visibly shaken, agreed to guide authorities to a vacant property in rural Indiana, not far from Indianapolis. At the base of a small hill, investigators noted marks on the pavement that suggested something had been dragged from one place to another. The structure itself had been long abandoned, its wood weathered, its interior cluttered with debris. As officers searched, they became aware of a distinct odor that grew stronger near an old dresser in the living room. A warrant was quickly obtained to allow a closer inspection. Forensic specialist Eric Russell began documenting the scene in detail. When he examined the dresser, he found what everyone had feared. The remains of a young girl were carefully preserved in place, and the entire section was removed for transport to ensure nothing was disturbed. The Morgan County coroner, Mike Ellis, supervised the recovery and later confirmed that DNA testing would take several weeks. The following days were heavy with silence as everyone waited for results. By late April, both Rand and Madison were formally charged. Rand faced multiple counts, including the most serious charge available, while Madison faced similar accusations, minus the most severe. Instead, she was accused of aiding in the events that followed. On May 12th, confirmation finally came. The remains belonged to Oakley. Testing showed an almost perfect genetic match. The news was delivered to both her family and law enforcement. A month later, the official ruling on her passing offered no definitive cause. Prosecutor Ryan Mears spoke candidly, saying her life had been overshadowed by the very people responsible for protecting it. The case never made it before a jury. In May 2025, Madison accepted a plea agreement that required her to testify against Rand in exchange for a 25-year sentence. Rand later pled guilty to charges connected to Oakley's passing, but avoided the original charge. He received 45 years in prison. When the sentencing took place, Oakley's father, Zachary, shared his pain publicly, describing the unimaginable challenge of facing the 2 people responsible for the loss of his daughter. Prosecutor Mears echoed the sentiment, noting the absence of basic compassion shown toward the child. Friends and family spoke of heartbreak, of an emptiness that words couldn't quite capture, and of a promise to remember Oakley always. It's impossible to listen to this story without thinking about what could have been different. Somewhere along the way, the safety nets failed, and the people in her life who could have stepped in either didn't notice or didn't act. That's the part that keeps me thinking. How many times do we walk past a situation that doesn't feel right and simply let it be? 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭 story should be a reminder to speak up, even when it feels uncomfortable. If you believe every child deserves a chance to grow up safe and loved, please like this video, subscribe, and share her story so it's never forgotten.